So it is 2024, a new year, a happy new year to everybody watching this. And yes, we have got a Doctor Who rumour rearing its head again. It always seems to happen around this time of year. I think January is when, doctors like Jodie Whittaker were first rumoured to be leaving the series. And I believe last year as well, we had rumours about spin-offs and about animations and colorisations and all sorts of stuff like that. It always seems to happen around this time of year, and this year is no different. We have another a rumour that, like I say, was around a little bit beforehand, but now seems to be that bit more credible. It's an interesting rumour. It concerns the first spin-off, supposedly, of this new era, the Bad Wolf era, the Whoniverse Disney era. And I think it's fair to say that it has ruffled some feathers in fandom, both when it was first rumoured, I believe in the Mirror or something a couple of months ago, and then now again. So without any further ado, let's get into this. Drum roll, the first spin-off of this new era is supposedly going to be the war between the land and the sea. Quite a mouthful of a title. I kind of look at that and I think, okay, like you could probably have deleted at least 2 or 3 words from that, like the war between land and sea maybe, or something like that, or something even more concise, because yeah, that is a very, very wordy title, but maybe they're all the rage these days, what do I know. So yeah, essentially this is meant to be a Doctor Who spin-off series, obviously, a limited series, which basically means kind of like a one-off thing, I think 5 parts or so maybe, which again, in fairness, joking aside and stuff, that does kind of fit the bill of a lot of the stuff that BBC are into at the moment and have been for the past few years. Stuff like Bodyguard or Vigil, sort of drama, thriller, action series like that you can have, over 5 weeks or whatever, or kind of drop as a box set onto the iPlayer, and that sort of thing. It sounds, doesn't it, like the type of thing that you might find on iPlayer like next week. So yeah, I think from that point of view, it does sound credible. What I should say as well is that since this was first rumoured, I think back in the autumn of last year, there has been a page for it that's appeared now on productionlist.com, which is, I believe, a kind of industry, like an official industry database for productions past and present, so that potential crew members can find out what's shooting in their area in the future, in the coming months and stuff like that to get work. So it's that sort of thing. We've got here The War Between the Land and the Sea, a spin-off of the fantasy action saga Doctor Who. Fantasy, interesting, because we know that the new era is kind of influenced more by fantasy, that will feature the Sea Devils. And yes, I will get onto that in just a minute. But yes, that is the premise for the series, a Sea Devil-centred storyline. Otherwise, there's not too much more information on there. We get sort of listed the executive team, executive producer team of Phil Collinson, Vicky Delow, Julie Gardner and Jane Tranter, and Russell T Davis there as well as a writer. And supposedly the series is in development / pre-production stages and will begin shooting in March. So before I get into my thoughts on that as a premise, let's just take a look at the other evidence that says this is a real thing, because there are kind of other bits and pieces that we can piece together here. So aside from that production page, which has appeared a lot more recently, in August of last year, so that far back, Bad Wolf, the production company, registered another sort of sub-production company, or whatever you'd call it, The War Between Limited. And you can view the page for this on the official government website and stuff. Again, there's not loads of details on there about what this is, and there's not actually anything to explicitly say this has anything to do with Doctor Who. It could be another show that Bad Wolf are producing, another drama, another new drama. It wouldn't be actually that surprising, to be honest, because they have done other shows in the past, obviously before Doctor Who, stuff like His Dark Materials. But then these rumours started up about a Doctor Who series, by the same name, The War Between the Land and the Sea, and it just all seems to fit together. It did all go quite quiet for a number of months, and I think because there wasn't really anything too credible thus far to talk about, I didn't really feel it was something that was worth making a video about, at the time. But I think now that we've got that production thing, the production page, and also some comments recently made by Russell T Davis as well in his Doctor Who magazine column, I believe in the Christmas issue, he referred to something he'd actually talked about before, I think a year ago in last year's Christmas column, where he'd mentioned an 8-word title for something. Now, people at the time had assumed, oh, this must be like a Doctor Who episode with an 8-word title. But then this recent column, he sort of mentioned this thing again, this 8-word title, this project. He talked about how it had been delayed, how they'd wanted to get on with it sooner, but they'd been so kind of preoccupied with, producing 2 seasons of Doctor Who that it had been, too much for them to take this on as well, so it got pushed back. I believe Scott Hancock, the script editor as well, was talking about a project in one of his columns, a project where scripts were coming in for this thing and he couldn't say what it was, but it seemed to be like kind of a thing adjacent to the actual main show. So basically all these things would seem to add up, assuming that the thing Russell is talking about is a spin-off and, it's an 8-word title, that would match up. The War Between the Land and the Sea is, for its sins, an 8-word title, which I still kind of get over. But anyway, that would match up. The comments from Scott would match up as well, because it would be something, that isn't the main show, but still has scripts coming in for it. And now this production page as well, it just all seems to make sense. We know that spin-offs are coming, and so, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that this is the first of those. But let's get to the real meat of this. Is a Sea Devil series really a good idea, for a Doctor Who spin-off full stop, let alone the first spin-off of this new era? So, yeah, it wouldn't have been at the top of anyone's list, I don't think. I think, that's kind of why people were kind of taken aback when the rumour first surfaced last year. I think that's why people are taking it with a really big pinch of salt and kind of not sort of expecting it to be true. The fact that we now have this other evidence obviously makes it more likely, so people are kind of reassessing that. I do think there are definitely 2 ways of looking at this, so either as a Doctor Who show from a Doctor Who fan perspective, or just like as a BBC post-Watershed, like 9 PM primetime drama, objectively in its own rights. I think, from that point of view, it is actually somewhat more convincing as a premise because, you could have units, and I'm sure Unit would be part of this, or whatever spin-off happens, quite frankly, because there's been so much set up now in the main show for the Unit characters to kind of spin off in something else. It would just make sense. But yeah, you could have them as the kind of the good guys, or supposedly the good guys, going up against some sort of alien threat, but at the same time a threat that's not too alien and still, has a sort of link to our own planet and is therefore sort of somewhat more human. You could have very sort of human Sea Devil characters, and it could be this big sort of thriller action series where, you've got these sort of invaders. The whole premise of the Sea Devils and the Silurians before them, to begin with, of these invaders that are already here and that sort of were already here before us as well, chronologically, and are technically the actual rulers of Earth in the first place. It's such a great premise, which the show itself has used to varying effect over the years. Some stories have done that better than others. Legend of the Sea Devils wasn't necessarily the kind of the best story for that, but the first Silurian story absolutely was, and the first Silurian story of the modern era as well, Hungry Earth, Cold Blood, again, went in that direction and kind of went to new places with that premise as well. So there's definitely a lot you could do with that premise, with the human characters, with the Sea Devil characters, and the kind of moral complexities there. With it being the Sea Devils rather than just the Silurians, it would allow you to go out to sea as well and have like submarines and boats, and with a budget, with this new era, with Disney behind it as well, I'm sure there is so much cool stuff they could do with helicopters and weaponry and all sorts of stuff, and like eruptions in the middle of the sea and battles and all that kind of thing. I think even though from a Doctor Who fan perspective, it sounds in principle like a silly idea to have a Sea Devil series, once you take a step back and actually look at this objectively as a show in its own rights, yeah, it could actually be really good. It could really surprise people, I think, and it could work as a thing in its own right as well, because it wouldn't require any past knowledge about Doctor Who or about the Sea Devils. They would, to all intents and purposes, be brand new characters, a brand new threat. You'd have the unit links there in terms of the regular characters and stuff who cross over, from the main show into this series, but it would otherwise be something that could stand apart and aside from Doctor Who on its own 2 feet and attract an audience in its own right as well, and be another kind of bodyguard, vigil, primetime BBC sort of show that could actually be very successful. So those are my thoughts on this as a concept. I think in summary, although it sounds a bit silly to have a Sea Devil spin-off, actually bring in units, make the Sea Devils a bit more human, add a more kind of adult sort of sci-fi, hard sci-fi slant to it, action, adventure, thriller slant to it as well, and it could actually be a really good series. That's what I think, but what do you think about this? Do you agree with me, or do you think it sounds completely and utterly ridiculous to start off the new era of spin-offs with an idea like this? And do you believe the rumours as well? You know, obviously it looks a bit more credible now because there's so much kind of evidence in so many different places, but even so, do you think this sounds likely, or are you still dubious? Whatever happens, if there is any further news on this in the coming months, weeks, days, whatever, if there is a kind of an official confirmation, I will be bringing that news to you on the channel, so you can look forward to that. And yeah, who knows, maybe this time next year we'll be sitting down to watch The War Between the Land and the Sea. If you have enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new for more stuff like this in the future. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye for now.